I've talked about 3 elements to marketing, but there's also 6 steps to marketing success. And a lot of what we do in the strategy side of our business is actually help businesses plan for what's coming and not necessarily what's happened in the past and still happening now. And this is where, when I look at a lot of businesses where they've had business coaches in, and nothing's really changed, is because they've had someone advising them that are doing things that worked a few years ago, but they're not working now, if that makes sense. Or they're making changes to what they believe needs to be done now, but change is happening, and I call it the new economy that's evolving. But it's not just that things are changing, but it's the pace of change. So this is why it's important to keep learning and making sure that you're ahead of the crowd in what you do. And so one of the most important words on that slide is anticipate. It's looking at what's coming, not necessarily what's now. Because what's happening now, you should have anticipated weeks, months, years ago. Because if things are difficult now, if you had better anticipation months and years ago, you'd be in a better position now. Does that make sense? The example I give is a bit like a surfer. He's in the water and he needs to get on the crest of the wave. It's all about seeing the wave coming, positioning your board in the right place for when the wave rises, you get up and you're on the crest of the wave. Because if you're in the wrong position as the wave comes over you, if you're in front of the wave, you're going to get swamped. If you're going to be behind the wave, you're not going to get on and you're going to miss the opportunity, if that makes sense. So anticipation is absolutely key. Okay, so just think about that. Think about your industry and think about how it's changing and what's coming. And if you don't know what's coming, you need to speak to Marcus or Steve or one of the other guys, because they know this stuff. Okay, have a look at their website, foodprofits.com. Just giving them a little bit of a plug there. Marketingrestaurant.co.uk, and you just have a look around the site. The next thing is, and this is where a lot of people get it wrong, is they don't do research. That's what I find when I look at businesses, is that a lot of businesses are born out of somebody the owner having a passion for a service or a product they have. Okay, so it's what they enjoy, what gives them a reason to get out of bed in the morning. That's absolutely key. That's right for that right product or the service. Because when you've got passion, when you genuinely got inspiration, you don't need motivation. Because motivation, the true sense of motivation, comes from inspiration, and that comes from inside. Anyway, there's another bit on motivation on the other side. But what I'm really looking for here is, I always remember, I'll give you an example here. I went to a seminar one day, and I was in the crowd, just like in the sitting, watching the speaker, just like you. And he stood up and he says, "Hey, great, I've got this great presentation for you. And I'm really looking forward to showing you all this stuff. But before I start," he went to the no-go board, he got his pen, and he said, "Shout out the first 10 things, the top 10 things that you want me to tell you about today, share with you." So the audience started throwing suggestions out, and he wrote 10 down. And at the end of it, they looked at those 10, and he was looking a little bit panicky. And we thought, what's happening here? And he said, a bit of a problem here. He says, I've created this presentation, and out of all those 10 things you want to know about, I've only got 3 of them on it. So I don't think I've got my presentation as probably you're expecting. And then he said, "It's not a problem, I can cover all those things for you. But the message I'm trying to convey to you is, I've come along prepared to give you what I think you want or think you need without asking." So if he'd known, before he'd come and started his presentation, if he'd sent out a feedback form and asked the audience, and in this case your audience would be your customers, what they want, then what he would have delivered or prepared for would have been what's relevant and what's most important. And what he was sharing was an example of how you can get it so wrong by assuming or thinking you know what the customer wants. And so what I would urge you to do, if you haven't done this of late, is to actually ask your customers, put the customer feedback forms in, speak to your customers, put something on your website, your blog, because the economy we're coming into is actually engagement, it's actually a two-way conversation. I'm going to go into this more later, but what I'm trying to say or suggest to you is that you do need to do research, because the research is the most important thing. And if you think that things aren't going right in your business with the results as I showed you, it could be because actually you're trying to deliver the wrong thing to the wrong people in the wrong place. So research is incredibly important. The next thing is innovation. You need to be doing something that your competitors aren't. And I was believing when you put a strategy together, you need to know what your customers are doing, your competitors are doing, and what their strategies are before you can define your own strategy, if that makes sense. Because you don't know, until you know what everyone else is doing, you don't know what you need to do to separate yourself. So innovation, I'll give you an example of this, of innovation. Go back a few years to Henry Ford, story about Henry Ford and how Ford Motor Company started. I know this because I work for Ford, obviously. But if it had been left to everybody else in the era of Henry Ford, what they would have been trying to do is design horses that went faster. But actually, what Henry Ford did on a trip to Chicago, he had a look around. He was fortunate enough to be shown around a packaging factory. It was to do with meat packaging factory, and it was that concept of automation, a factory production line, that then gave him the idea to take in and produce cars on a factory assembly line. And that's what you would call innovation. And what I would urge you to do, because I've studied people like Steve Jobs and these business leaders, and what I would say, as they say, and I've listened to, is that you need to go and have a look in other industries, what's working, that you could bring into your industry that would make a massive difference. Something that would be separate yourself massively from your competitors and even set a new trend in the industry. Okay, so innovation is very important. Systems, I guess the one to use probably in the food industry is McDonald's. They may not be the best burgers, arguably, or depending on your views, but what they are good at is consistency, because they have systems and processes. And unless you've got a system and a process in your business, you can't scale. You can't get scale, and it's scale and consistency that really delivers results. So systems and processes, it's having the tools and the automation to make the difference. And obviously execution. It's all right having the knowledge, but you've got to execute it. You've got to make sure, a bit like on the wave, you've got to get on there and be on the crest of the wave. Make sure that everything you've done in the first 5 steps are executed and effectively. And in all of those steps, and the economy that we're going into is all about building relationships. Building relationships with all people all the way, because it's those people that will give you the comments, the reviews, where your potential customers are going to find out about you before they come to you.